What's going on, y'all? Sean of Math Swap Tutoring here. And today I want to talk about the law of syllogism. So I would recommend that you watch the law of detachment video, as well as this one, the law of syllogism, so you can kind of like distinguish between the two. Before we get into this one, make sure you like the video, make sure you subscribe to the Math Swap Tutoring YouTube channel, and let's get into it. All right. Okay, so let me see. I seem to have got it. Okay, here are my notes. All right, so here we go. So the law of syllogism um says this. Okay. Okay. So given two conditional statements, um where the conclusion of the first conditional statement is the hypothesis of the second conditional statement, um the conclusion is a statement. Okay, I should say a conditional statement. Oops. That connects the hypothesis of the first statement and the conclusion of the second statement. My handwriting is better than this one, but for some reason this application doesn't really translate it well. All right, but anyhow, so let's do the symbolic representation of this while reading through the definition. So given two conditional statements, so let's start with, so here's one of them. If P then Q. So the conclusion of the first conditional statement, so this right here is your conclusion, hypothesis conclusion. The conclusion of the first conditional statement is the hypothesis of the second conditional statement. So look, check this out. You have two conditional statements here, and you see that the conclusion of this first conditional statement is the hypothesis of a second conditional statement. So that's what these statements share in common. You basically the conclusion connects the hypothesis of the first statement and the conclusion of the second statement. Okay. All right. So if we were to write this in words, so if P then Q, if and if Q then R, therefore if P then R. Okay. So so given that if P happens, Q happens, and that if Q happens, R happens, therefore if P happens, R happens. Okay. And if you think about it, it kind of makes sense. So let's go ahead and apply some examples here. Um, so you can kind of see what the law of syllogism is in like a quote real world example, and then what it, is not. All right, so let's go back to our black coloring here. So, okay, if it snows, then school will be canceled. Okay, so this is a conditional statement here. Conditional statement number one. If school is canceled, then teachers will send electronic work. Okay. So that is our second conditional statement. Okay. So let's go ahead and do some labeling here. So here is our hypothesis and our conclusion of the first one. Here's our hypothesis. If you know, it matches the conclusion of the first statement. And here's the conclusion of our second statement. So now we can say, therefore, if the, the hypothesis of the first, it snows, then the conclusion of the second one, teachers will send electronic work. Okay. Now, so if P then Q, Q then R, therefore, if P then R. Okay. Note the pattern. Note the pattern and make sure that you see that. Okay. All right. And make sure you don't make any random guesses. You like really make sure you understand how this follows the law of syllogism. And I definitely encourage you to label these with the appropriate letters as you go. It's helpful. Okay, let's do another example. All right, so if it snows, then school will be canceled. Okay. All right, so that's our first statement. Next statement is if school is not canceled, then teachers will not send electronic work. Okay. Now, before we try to determine the conclusion, let's look at this. Let's do our labeling here. So here's our hypothesis conclusion. What about this here? If school is not canceled, it's a little different than Q. It's not Q. Okay. And so then you have R here. I say not R. All right. So can you make a conclusion from this? Because based on the law of syllogism, if P then Q and if Q then R, therefore, if P then R. This does not follow the law of syllogism, so you can't make a conclusion from this. Okay? Think about it logically. If it snows, then school will be canceled. If school is not canceled, then teachers will not send electronic work. So, but that may not be true. That may not be true. Teachers may still send electronic work, especially these days in 2024. But anyhow, so you can't make a conclusion based on the law of syllogism. with that, okay? All right, one more example. Make sure this makes sense to you now. All right. So let's go back to our black color. So if it snows, I like to use the same example because I think it helps it to all make sense a little bit more. Then school will be canceled. Okay. Um, if it snows, then roads will be blocked. Okay, so let's do our labeling here. Okay, there's a P, there's a Q. What is this? P again. It snows. Roads will be blocked. Can we make any conclusions based on that? According to the law of syllogism, no. You can't make any sort of conclusion based on that. Okay. So make sure you note that it doesn't follow the law of syllogism. So no conclusion. Okay. Make sure that makes sense to you. It has to follow the law of syllogism, like verbatim, so to speak. So remember, the law of syllogism is you got that first conditional statement, you have a second conditional statement that shares the conclusion of the first as its own hypothesis. Therefore, you can conclude that if P, then R. All right. Hopefully that was helpful. Make sure that you watch it again and again to make it make sense. Think through it, make sure it makes sense. Make sure you like this video. Make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel. And also make sure you share it with a friend who needs help as well. Y'all have a good one. Hey, thank you for watching this video. If you need math tutoring or you need SAT math help, look in the description to find out how you can sign up today. Also, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you stay in touch with Math Swap Tutoring on YouTube. Have a good one.